So if somebody has breached a contract, how fast do I have to act? When do I have to go to court? My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota, and New York City. Today, let's take a look at what happens when somebody's breached a contract and we decide what to do next and how soon we have to do it. So while you may think that once you find out somebody breaches a contract, you immediately have to run to court, the reality is that's not often the case. There can be a variety of reasons why it's a good idea to wait a little bit and get your ducks in a row, get everything together so you're ready to bring a breach of contract lawsuit. So that rush to the courthouse, that stuff that you see in TV and in movies, while it may make for great drama, the fact is you may leave your case short-sighted because you're missing out on important evidence and other information that you need for your lawsuit. So the first thing we want to do is let's look at the evidence. Let's see what kind of proof we have to this breach of contract. If you just think they breached the contract, you're not really sure what's happened next, then it's important that you take a moment and get all of your evidence together. Now, the second thing we need to look at is whether this breach is harming your business immediately. And if it's an immediate breach that must be remedied yesterday, then that's going to weigh in favor of an immediate lawsuit. And one thing you may need to consider is bringing an action for a temporary injunction, meaning that you're stopping the breach or you're stopping the other party from doing something. Or if they have your money, maybe the TRO says that they have to return your money immediately. So if we do have those immediate concerns, then that may weigh in favor of filing immediately. But you've got to look at the situation and also make sure that you'd be able to prove that immediate harm to your business. And what's happening here, number 3, is that the clock is ticking. But the clock isn't necessarily ticking for yesterday. So in this situation, we're going to be looking at a Minnesota statute of limitations, and that is how long you have to file a lawsuit, to bring a lawsuit on a breach of contract claim. So again, while many people think it has to be done yesterday or done immediately, the reality is there are different statutory deadlines for when you have to bring the action, and they're probably longer than you think. Before we go much further, if you have more interest in a breach of contract action and what goes into the filings and the defenses and everything else, I do have a book you can get on Amazon, or you can go directly to howcontractsbecome.lawsuits.com and you can download a free PDF version if you would like. So you don't have to do this alone. There are plenty of resources out there. And again, please feel free to get my book and you can get more information on handling the breach of contract lawsuit. So in Minnesota, we're looking at the statute of limitations for a breach of contract. So if it's a written contract, we have 6 years to file your lawsuit. If it's an oral contract, meaning it's a discussion between the two of you that would rise to the level of a contract, it's also 6 years. But the challenge we're going to have is how do we prove the terms of the contract? If it wasn't in writing, how do we prove what was said in that conversation? We don't always have writings or transcripts of everything that is said in our life, and so we can run into that problem. If it's a UCC sale of goods, there's a very particular type of contract. That statute of limitations is 4 years in Minnesota. And you can also have a shorter term if your contract specifically says we have a 1 year, a 2 year, a 4 year statute of limitations just for breaches of this contract. So as you get started down this road, the first thing to do is figure out what is your time limit. If it's a general breach of a written contract, you have 6 years in Minnesota. And you want to make sure that you understand that so you know when you have to get your information together, and that may give you some time to gather evidence. So before we file with the court, let's figure out what we need to have in place. And the first thing we have to do is figure out what kind of contract we have. Is it a written contract? Is it an oral contract? Again, those written contracts are much easier to prove, and the evidence is also usually in that paperwork. And the second step, speaking of evidence, is making sure we're preserving our evidence. So if part of the contract includes emails between you and the other party, or let's say they have an email showing that they've breached that contract, let's make sure we're preserving that evidence because it will likely be needed as part of the lawsuit. Third thing we have to do is act proactively. So don't wait until the end of 6 years. Don't wait till 5 years, 364 days. If you know it's a breach and you need some relief sooner, you'll probably want to file it before that 6-year period. However, there are some times when it makes sense to wait a little bit longer. But the danger of waiting till that last day is if there's a problem with the filing and it doesn't get entered in time, you could lose based on the statute of limitations because you were 1 day too late. If there was some kind of hiding of the breach, so you didn't know about it, or there's been some other force majeure clause. So for example, when we had the COVID pandemic, a lot of courts extended the time that you had to file for statute of limitations. So we want to look and see if there's any other reason why that statute of limitations, whether agreed to in the contract or whether it's under statute, has been extended for some reason. And once we know that, we can make sure we know what that last date is that we have to file a breach of contract action. So as I said, you don't have to go this alone. Again, if you'd like some more information, I do have a book on this called How Contracts Become Lawsuits. You can get it on Amazon or at howcontractsbecome.lawsuits.com. I'm happy to discuss further breach of contracts litigation with you. If you'd like, you can go to andrewayers.com. There's a red legal strategy session button on the front page. If you click that, you'll be taken to my personal calendar where we can set up a legal strategy session to discuss your situation and your breach of contract case. If you like this video, you can hit the like or thumbs up button below. You can subscribe for future episodes on 𝙃𝙀𝙍𝙀.com or at YouTube. You can always pick up the book at Amazon or at howcontractsbecome.lawsuits.com. And just remember, if we've had a breach of contract, your case doesn't necessarily have to be filed immediately. So take a minute, take a breath, and figure out what's the best next step so we can have the best possible outcome for your breach of contract case.